The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Uplands neighborhood meeting for Parcel A. This is the Master Official Development Plan review and discussion with the applicant. And if that isn't what you're here for, then double check. But the meeting tonight is the Uplands. It's the second night. We had a meeting last night, and we're going to do essentially the same presentation and kind of format this evening. Next slide, please. And in doing that, as I noted, the format and the presentation will be similar to last night. The applicant presentation will be slightly shorter so that we have more time for questions from the attendees here this evening. This meeting will be recorded, and it will be available in listen-only mode on YouTube. The link is on the slide at the end of the meeting, and the city's webpage for the Uplands project is also on that slide at the end of the meeting. One thing I'm going to say is that the questions that were not answered last night are being answered and will be available on the city's webpage for the Uplands on Monday. If there are unanswered questions from tonight, we'll try to get those to the city's webpage for the Uplands on Tuesday. So that would be February the 2nd. So if you have questions tonight, there is an opportunity for you to ask again. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Patrick Caldwell, and I'm the planner for this particular project, for the development plan and this master official development plan. And through this meeting this evening, other city staff will be available if there are questions specific to certain topics, and they'll introduce themselves at that time. And at the end of the meeting, there's a slide that will list all the city staff that you would want to contact if you have further questions on the Uplands project. The applicant will be doing a presentation, and during their presentation, they will introduce themselves. There's a lot of people involved, and it's probably easier to just identify the individual as they come on rather than do the long list ahead of time. So I hope that works for everyone. Next slide, please. So this evening's agenda is similar to last night. The meeting started at 6. I did the welcome. Wanted to say that the introductions I just did for me, and then we'll do the applicant presentation. There'll be question and answer and any public comment following that presentation, and we'll do a conclusion, which will essentially say what are the next steps for the development, and hopefully will be done by 7:30 tonight. If there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions, we might go a few minutes over if people still want to stay. But we're trying to hold this to about 7:30. Next slide, please. So there's an opportunity for those attending the webinar to ask questions. You can ask question by typing in the question box, and box is on the right side of this, should be on the right side of your screen. And in the question box, you would type in a question. We've already got a few questions from some folks, and we will take those in the order in which they came in. If you wanted to ask a question verbally, you would write in the question box, I wish to speak, and we will take the questions that are written and those that wish to speak in the order in which they came in to the question box. And when the applicant presentation is complete, we will read those questions aloud. If it's a comment, we will just say, that's a comment, thank you. If there's a question, we'll either the applicant or a city staff person will speak to the question. Next slide. So this is the vicinity map, just giving you an indication of the location of the topic of the meeting tonight. Parcel A is one of the 5 parcels in the preliminary development plan for the Uplands proposal. This is the, I'll call it the square. It's the big parcel bounded by 88th and 84th and Federal and Lowell. That will be the focus of tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. Just to give you an update on where we're at, the city's review process is fairly lengthy and has a lot of layers. And I'll just briefly go through these. There was a pre-application meeting in 2018. There was a preliminary development plan submittal also in 2018. The preliminary development plan is really the zoning of the property. There's a master official development plan, and that is specific to this parcel A. It is only one of the 5 parcels. Not all of the parcels have to have a master official development plan. We won't use the shorthand for this MODP or ODP or PDP during the meeting. We'll try and make it clear that these are different proposals and you won't have to sort of double check on the acronyms. Next step after the review of the master ODP, master official development plan, that's ongoing until the public hearings. A neighborhood meeting is required. Last night and tonight are the neighborhood meetings. Following this, the applicant will make some changes per the input and comments from tonight and from other comments from the city and other parties that have a interest in the larger proposal. We'll do the review as needed. And a planning commission public hearing is required, and also a city council public hearing is required. Those public hearings have not been scheduled. They will be scheduled following the completion of the review to the city's satisfaction. Next slide, please. This is the city's piece of the city's comprehensive plan, and the focus tonight again is on Parcel A, the square. It's 150 acres. The city's comprehensive plan designation for this property is traditional mixed-use neighborhood design. You'll see the acronym of TMUND in a lot of places in the comments, etc. for this property. This is a flexible designation to allow mixed use, some apartments, single family detached, really sort of more of a traditional neighborhood feel about it, with the commercial integrated more into neighborhood. Next slide, please. And this is a slide that is a bit confusing. If you look at this, you'll see that the existing zoning actually has 3 components. And the proposal is to change this to planned unit development. The planned unit development is a flexible zoning that would work well, and the city asks that that be the zoning designation for traditional mixed-use neighborhood development. And so you'll see that if you check the zoning, there's some existing zoning that shows some retail commercial, some residential, and just an open area, which is kind of an undesignated land use. So planned unit development will bring a cohesive zone character and mix to this parcel. Next slide, please. Just a bit of summary of what a master official development plan is. It really shows the general pedestrian and vehicular circulation routes. It shows residential densities. It shows parks and trail locations. It shows building prototypes. It shows commercial concepts and their location. And it also shows miscellaneous design details. That's a real brief summary. There's a lot more to it. And I'll let the applicant explain that during their presentation of what their proposal is. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll introduce the applicant. Applicant is Oriad, and it looks like Marcus Packner is going to lead in. It looks like Bonnie Muzelk is going to accompany. So welcome both. And I'll let you introduce yourselves separately.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Patrick. And first of all, I'd like to say on behalf of the entire Uplands team, how honored we are to be here this evening. My name is Marcus Packner. I'm an Uplands team member. I'm joined by Bonnie Muzelk. Bonnie is our lead planner, and you'll be hearing primarily from Bonnie tonight. I just want to set the table a little bit before we jump in. So if I can ask to go to the next slide, please. This shows a little bit of the outline, if you will, of the applicant presentation. Patrick did such a terrific job in setting up what we want to accomplish for the meeting goals tonight. And this is just a little bit about our presentation. We will walk through briefly the process that we're going through with the city. We'll talk about the comprehensive land plan, and then really start to look at preliminary development plan and the master official development plan for this site. We are primarily focused on Parcel A tonight, and then we really want to focus on a few elements, the parks and so forth, the architecture that are found in Parcel A. And then we really look forward to the question and public input. Next slide, please. As I said, I'm Marcus Packner. I've already introduced Bonnie. I'm not going to introduce the rest of our team. I just want you all to know that we have a full team here, all of our different kind of subject matter experts to answer any questions that may come up. So we'll look to that. We will introduce ourselves as we go through this when we come up for question and answer. Next slide, please. This is that first item we wanted to start with, so we can move through this and get to that. We really want to focus on this. Just the highlights again, as Patrick mentioned, there are 5 parcels. We are focused on the large square, if you will, Parcel A, that is right at 150 acres. All 5 of the parcels combined is right at 233 total acres. Next slide, please. I did just want to say, I know this has been something that neighbors and the city has been very focused on in providing ample notice for any type of neighborhood meeting. We could not agree more. We think it is terrific. We should have required, you see the blue map in the middle square there, that shows that the parcel owners within 500 feet of this site of Parcel A. That was about 290 property owners. We actually thought it was much more prudent. Frankly, it's much better for the project to good feedback and constructive criticism from everyone. So we actually mailed 750 feet out from all 5 of our parcels. So we ended up notifying about 1,340 people. Again, thank you for all of us that joined us last night and tonight. We look forward to this discussion. As we go to the next slide, please, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie, and she's going to walk us through a little bit of the city process.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Patrick. So again, just a reminder where we are in the process. About a year ago, we did some comp plan amendments in February that for parcels B, D, and E. We're kind of in the middle section of this piece right now. Back in July of 2019, we did a neighborhood meeting for the preliminary development plan for all 5 parcels. And today we're focused on this orange box here, which is the master official development plan specific to Parcel A. In the future, we'll have site-specific official development plans, which will show detailed landscaping, architecture, more information like that. And we'll have additional neighborhood meetings to review that with all of you. Next slide. So talking a little bit about the comprehensive land use plan, this is a tool that the city used to define the vision and intent for development throughout the city, and it provides overarching direction for land use on a specific site. Next slide. So as Patrick mentioned, we're traditional mixed-use neighborhood development, this Parcel A Center Square here. Next slide. And the point of the traditional mixed-use neighborhood development is to create inclusive neighborhoods with a mix of residential and supportive non-residential uses and a walkable, pedestrian-oriented village development pattern. This might include medium and small lot residential, multifamily and lofts, and non-residential such as offices, services, retail, and live work. Next slide. The plan provides some specific guidance on maximum intensity of development. So the plan allows up to 18 homes per acre and a maximum FAR of 1.0. And again, a variety of residential and commercial uses. Next slide. The comprehensive plan is used as our vision as we create the preliminary development plan. So this slide here shows the land use plan for the preliminary development plan. As we started creating that preliminary development plan, we generally worked from the outside in. So this slide shows where our public land dedication is planned for, about 11 acres in the northwest corner, and 10 acres generally located at 86th and Federal, shown here in green. Next slide. We then laid on the overall framework street network. So you can see we have 85th, 87th, and 85th, 86th, and 87th with intersections along Federal Boulevard. These kind of meander through the site a little bit to help slow down traffic. We have Irving Street, which runs north-south and connects to the existing Irving streets just north of us and just south of us. Next slide. The next piece that we looked at are the perimeter setbacks. So these define the minimum distances from the right-of-way or perimeter property lines to the future buildings. Those setbacks could include landscaping, berms, sidewalks, trails, similar things to that. These vary a little bit based on the context of the site, so what type of streets are on the surrounding edges and what types of uses are proposed. So on Federal, we're showing about a 15-foot setback in the middle of the piece that transitions to a wider 35-foot setback where lower density uses are proposed. We have an 18-foot setback along 88th and Lowell. There's a 20-foot setback proposed along the public land dedication in the northwest corner. And then we have a 15-foot setback along the south along 84th. Next slide. As we dig further into this, we start creating planning areas for different uses. So the pieces you see here in beige are part of what's called village residential. So the proposed uses within these village residential parcels are attached residences such as duplexes or townhomes or single-family detached homes. These 5 planning areas include a maximum of 900 units on approximately 106 acres, creating an overall density of 8 homes per acre. Next slide. At our entrance at 86 and Federal, this brown piece you see here is what we call the village center. So this is a little bit higher density and includes a little bit more variety of uses. Residential uses could still include single-family residences, such as single-family homes, duplexes, or townhomes, but could also include apartments, condos, lofts. Commercial uses could include offices, retail, commercial, live work. This planning area includes 631 units on 43 acres for an overall density of approximately 14.6 homes per acre. And it has a minimum 30,000 square feet of commercial uses, which is approximately 0.02 FAR. Next slide. As you piece all these things together, we're proposing approximately 1,531 homes over 150 acres, creating a density of 10.29 homes per acre. Next slide. And this chart compares how our PDP our preliminary development plan is in compliance with the Westminster comprehensive plan. So one of those first slides we walked through noted that we're allowed up to 1.0 FAR across 150 acres. We're proposing 30,000 square feet which is approximately 0.02 FAR across 43 acres, again, in this darker brown piece along Federal. We're allowed up to 18 dwelling units per acre within the comp plan, and we're proposing 1,531 homes, creating a density of 10.29. So both our residential and commercial uses are well within what's allowed in the traditional mixed-use neighborhood development. Next slide. As we dig into the master official development plan, each layer that we work on provides additional detail. So here you can see a framework plan for how this parcel A may lay out. This includes a potential block pattern. You can see in the darker black thick lines, those are potential street network and the blocks of homes in a generally gridded location. This shows some ideas of where private parks and trails may be located. And the master official development plans includes design characteristics to help guide future neighborhood development. Next slide. Here you can see a little bit more information on parks. We talked about the public land dedication. The green asterisks here are what we're calling Uplands parks. We're required to provide 4% of the land area as private parks and private open space. Each of the planning areas we just looked at will have one private park. The parks may be owned and maintained by the HOA or a private entity. And all of those private parks, even though they're called private, they will be open to the public. So that every single home within Uplands will be within a 5-minute walk of a park. Next slide. Again, you can see the lighter brown areas here, what we're calling village residential. The master official development plan provides some design characteristics that note that these are alley-loaded homes, either attached or detached. It encourages the use of a traditional grid punctuated by public and private parks and open space. It encourages pedestrian connections between neighborhoods, and it encourages homes fronting on streets and parks to help enhance the pedestrian experience. Next slide. The village center, again, this brown piece along Federal, is the highest intensity use portion of Parcel A. So this includes the residential and mixed uses. This is the only portion of this parcel that allows commercial and multifamily uses. It has a maximum 65-foot height. Again, this is the only portion of Parcel A that allows this height. And it's really focused on framing views down 86 across this public land dedication and park. The highest density and commercial uses are focused specifically along this entry at 86 and Federal to help create a dynamic village center that encourages people to eat, live, play within the village center. Next slide. We also, in our master official development plan, provide a little bit more design detail on what this village center could look like. So what we're showing here today are just kind of concepts and building forms that could be used. This building in the bottom left corner is what a one-story commercial building may look like. This building just to the right of it is what a mixed-use building could look like. It might have retail and restaurants on the ground floor with residential homes above it. Next slide. And here's a plan view of what that village center could look like. Again, this is just a concept, and as we go through additional design details, we'll do site-specific official development plans that show the detailed layout, the detailed landscaping, what those buildings could look like. This again is showing what a mixed-use building, so that would have ground floor retail along 86 with residential units above it, a potentially commercial one-story building along the north side of 86. And you can see how this, very pedestrian friendly and thoughtful streetscape interacts with that future park. Next slide. Next slide. Again, we talked a little bit about this in the master official development plan, but just wanted to highlight where those parks could be. The public land dedication, the bigger dark green pieces, will be owned and maintained by the city. They'll be designed by the city with community input. The parks that are shown here with the asterisk will be designed and built with the adjacent public improvements. Next slide. And here's an example of what some of those parks could look like. The two on the right side of the screen are, really focused along the residential uses, little green courts for the homes to front along. They might have pedestrian connections through them, small gathering areas, little open lawn areas so that everyone has great access to walk to a park nearby. The image on the left side shows a potential concept for that detention pond at the southwest corner. Really want to work with that pond and add some pedestrian connections and some more quiet and intimate spaces for residents. Next slide.
I may just add here on this next slide here, one of the things that we'd love to ask from all of you, we appreciate your participation tonight. We see a number of questions coming in, but if you could also go to this myuplandsinput.com, and it actually allows what Bonnie just talked about. It allows you to go to specific images about the parks and actually rate the type of things, the amenities that you'd like to see there, the transitions, the buffers to your existing community, trail connections, all of those things. So if you would please go to that, if you have a few minutes, we would greatly appreciate it. It also has a link on our uplandscolorado.com. We list the resources that really have all these documents that we are trying to comply with and that are guiding us from the city in developing these. So this is just kind of a way to provide additional feedback on the project. Next slide, please.
Perfect. And then talking a little bit about architecture, all these details will be shown and provided in the site-specific official development plans, which will include additional neighborhood meetings when each planning area has builders as part of the team. This first slide shows what some single-family detached or duplex or paired homes may look like. So these are not intended to show exactly what the architecture is going to look like, but give an idea of scale and size and potential materials. Next slide. And this slide is a little bit higher density. This shows, for example, up on the upper left corner, you can see townhomes, so single family attached homes, going up to multifamily buildings. Again, this would be focused at the 86th and Federal location, could have retail on the ground floor with residential homes above it. Next slide. And then want to talk a little bit about infrastructure improvements. So we're zooming out a little bit to focus on pedestrian connections. Wanted to show all 5 parcels of Uplands here so you can see how they connect to the existing neighborhood and the balance of the Uplands community. But all these colored dashed lines are pedestrian or bike improvements that will be made with the development of this overall neighborhood. For example, on Lowell, we have Lowell and 88th. That's really a focused multimodal street. So we have 10-foot concrete trails, where some of these other connections are 8-foot walks or trails, really giving opportunities to connect to Cammonish Park, Highland Hills, Cobblestone Park, give opportunities for the residents who live there today and the future residents to have better access to these great amenities. Next slide. And we have here a couple of slides. We won't go into detail on these, but if anyone has specific questions, we're happy to walk through these. So this slide shows 88th and 84th Avenue. If you want to go to the next slide, that shows Lowell and Federal. And these are really showing the improvements that will be made, sidewalks, tree lawns, additional travel lanes where the traffic study requires that, opportunities for bike lanes, just things to improve the connections and access around the site. Next slide. Here you can see, again, Irving Street running north-south and 86 running east-west. Again, happy to walk through any of those details as we get through questions. Next slide.
I think I'll take our last couple of slides here. I'll just say again, myuplandsinput.com. We'd love to have your continued feedback on this. We appreciate your time. Next slide, please. This is our final slide, I believe, as we kind of head to Q&A. We tried to get through this a little more diligently tonight so we could be sure and answer all your questions. As we talked about, we're here in Q1 of 2021, working on the items that we've discussed: the annexation, the rezoning, the preliminary development plan, and the master official development plan. It then moves to 21, this first quarter again. This presentation would go to the Planning Commission. That is not at all set. That's a date to be determined. As Patrick indicated earlier, there's a number of feedback that we'll respond to from your neighborhood comments and city comments before we make that submittal to go to Planning Commission and then ultimately to City Council. Lastly, you see the future beginning here concurrently in 2021. We will start doing site-specific official development plans for those other parcels. Some of you may be in Observatory Heights or the other neighborhoods. We will go through that process on each one of these other parcels. So I think we put a lot of information out there. I think we can go to next slide, which I believe, Patrick, is just our Q&A slide. So we want to thank you for your time, and we'll go to question and answer.
Yeah, I think I'm back on. Yeah, thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Bonnie, for the presentation. I'm just going to reiterate. If you have a question, go to the question box on the right side of your screen, type in your question, and we'll answer it in the order that it comes in. And I think if you wish to speak, type in there, "I wish to speak." And again, we will call on you as at the time you're in your order that you posted that. We have a number of questions, so I will start. And the way this is going to go is that one of the staff here will read the question aloud, and then I will let Marcus or Bonnie or their team or city staff reply. Occasionally, I'll step in and ask a certain person to speak up if I see that there's a need to do so. And with that, I guess I'll say, let's go to the first question. There was a question before the meeting even started, somebody posted. So thank you. Thinking ahead.
Thank you, Patrick. First question is, will there be ranch style, possibly with walkout basement?
That's definitely a potential. We haven't figured out all the builders and homes will be everywhere, but that's certainly an allowed use and could show up within the overall community and will be identified on any site-specific official development plans.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question. Can you describe the background options?
I saw that question in the chat right when we were just starting. I wasn't sure what that was referring to. Marcus or Patrick, I don't know if that meant, I wasn't sure what that meant.
Okay. I'll ask the person who asked the question to please restate it further down in the chat, and hopefully we'll get back to that question if it's clarified.
Okay, next question.
Okay, next is a comment. The format for these meetings limits community engagement. The neighborhood should be visible and given enough time for everyone to speak. This meeting is supposed to be for us, right? We should be able to have our cameras on, but still be muted. Next is a question. What is your plan to rectify the Pillar of Fire Church's relationship with the KKK? The Pillar of Fire Church took gifts and donations from the KKK and used their land to terrorize communities of color, including burning crosses, allowing the KKK to speak at their church, and met to plan to take over local Coloradan governments. How will you, Uplands, support our community and rectify this issue? This should be included in master plans if you want to continue referencing this land's original plans.
Yeah, I'll just say, I'll jump right in on that. I certainly can't speak to that history, or I certainly can't speak for the church, but I can tell you as a representative of the prospective future owner and developer of this land, that we are completely committed to offering a diverse mix of housing types. that really attract a diverse population of people from all different backgrounds. So I want to thank you for that question. It completely comports with our vision for the site. Your comment, we want to have really a diverse population here. I also think, and one thing I'll just say, we've created a nonprofit, the Uplands Community Collective, that will stay in place after the development, that really is focused on that authentic kind of community engagement. So thank you for that question. I don't know that history, but I can guarantee we are committed to a diverse population and housing types.
Thank you, Marcus. Next question, please.
Okay, this is a question about water usage. If water usage is not an issue, then why did you put a moratorium on building in 2018? I don't think you answered the question about water usage yesterday. The development would increase water usage. There's only one water source, so Uplands would have to use Westminster's supply. What will you do to make sure the water usage decreases across the rest of the city? Will you push for Westminster current residents to be able to get efficient water saving measures at cost or below cost? Water is a basic necessity. The city needs to provide a detailed answer for considering putting more of a strain on our basic necessity.
There's a lot of sub-questions in that larger question. So I'm going to ask, first of all, our Public Works Department representative, Julie Keeler, to speak to the city's water situation and how we address that. So Julie, I think you're here. So if you wanted to, there you are. Thank you.
Hi, Patrick. Keeler, Utilities Engineering Manager. I'd like to clarify that the moratorium in 2018 was focused on sewer capacity in the Big Dry Creek Basin, which is north of all of the Uplands parcels. Sewer is separate from water supply issue, which leads me to the second part of the question. These areas of lands are farm right now, but they are shown as residential. And in the 2013 comp plan, we count the water usage that these land uses would take up if they weren't farmland. We've talked with Uplands about a water budget. They've worked very closely with our water supply division, remain within the water budget, which they were given. So even in times of Uplands is working within the budget that public has worked with on. And so the question about above and beyond, we're okay with this water bit, and we're okay with what Uplands is telling us how they're going to use this water. I'd like to continue to reinforce the message about conservation-minded landscape and water efficient fixtures that we talk with Uplands about and require on these as they move forward. So getting into your comment about pushing Westminster residents, pushing is a really strong word, but I want to talk with you about what we went to City Council with this past Monday, which was a conservation-minded landscaping package and the beginnings of a more efficient toilet replacement program. Please go back to City Council or call me. My contacts will be in the slides at the very end to talk more about this. And I agree that water is a basic necessity. And with that, I will close and thank you for the question and turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you, Julie. Bonnie or Marcus, do you speak to the water efficiency efforts that the Uplands is proposing?
Yeah, Todd, do you want to hit a little bit more on water? Sorry, touch on.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. And thanks for. As Julie had mentioned, we've been working very closely actually from day one because water is one of the key components of this project and budget that was mentioned. So we feel that we are actually going to follow that budget, of course. And how is the development that we're proposing actually will use less water than the standard lots that are in Westminster today. Buildings will actually have more efficiency with all the appliances within them. And so we look very closely at those elements, and those major contributors are not only the appliances, but actually the outdoor water usage on lawns. And with the density we do have and the lots that we're proposing and some of the mixed use that we have, of course, we don't have the large lawn areas that take water or utilize the water. So we feel very comfortable, are aligned with what the city has already talked about here tonight and last night on the water budget and usage.
Thanks, Todd. Next question.
The next question is a request to provide more up-to-date information about traffic statistics and how this will affect the surrounding area. You're putting in more lights and more intersections. A quarter of all deaths and half of all injuries in car accidents occur at intersections. How will adding more than 1,000 cars to this area not increase the risk of traffic accidents?
Patrick, does someone from the city want to talk about traffic? Otherwise, we're happy to have Todd step in and talk about traffic.
Yeah, I guess I was assuming that Todd would speak to the traffic studies that you're doing.
Okay.
Thanks, Patrick. As far as the we have done a detailed study within this overall area and also pushed that out a little further from the boundary of our project to look at the impacts. And so the reference here to statistics or the impacts that are out there, if you go to our website, if you also go to the city's website, you'll see a copy of that detailed report. It looks at each one of the intersections that we have. It looks at what's called level of service at these intersections. And it also identifies the proposed improvements that would actually help alleviate some of the traffic issues that are out there today, and also alleviate any impact that we are having to the traffic being brought by this development. As far as the accidents, that's a little more of a, something you need to get into a little more detail on as far as looking at intersections. But what I can tell you is that this project, again, will actually, one of the best things that we're doing with this project and the improvements that we're doing from the traffic side is safety. We don't have people that are walking on the shoulder of the roadway. We're trying to discourage anybody from crossing without signalized intersections. So a lot of the safety concerns that are out there today, and a lot of the safety concerns that we've heard from the neighbors and also from the city and CDOT, those are really going to be reduced drastically, we feel, with the improvements that we are doing and the safety improvements that we are bringing to this project. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Todd. I'm going to ask Heath Klein, who's the city's traffic engineer, to just speak a little about the in big picture traffic studies and how the city's analyzing that, looking at it. So Heath, I think you're here tonight.
Yes. Good night, everyone. Heath Klein, City Transportation Engineer. And so just similar to what Todd has said, yes, the city does look at the overall operation of traffic signals and our transportation network and look at ways to improve. Some of the improvements that we will be making to Lowell Boulevard at specifically 84th that doesn't have turn lanes, we will make them safer by providing a left turn and the right turn lanes. And as we know at 88th in Lowell, currently there is not a left turn arrow. So this project could provide the left turn arrow for both north and southbound Lowell Boulevard to get onto 88th Avenue. So that starts to help the safety and increase the capacity of the roadway. Yes, there are quite a few accidents that do happen at the intersections. And so with the signalized intersections, what you try to do is protect and eliminate, if you can, any of the left turn conflicts. So especially on Federal Boulevard, we will be looking at, in conjunction with CDOT, what we can do, whether a lot of the left turns need to be a protected left, meaning that you can only turn left when you have a green arrow, or if there is times at certain periods of the day that you could do a permissive left. But yes, overall, the city does look at ways to make sure that our roadways are as safe as possible. And the unfortunate thing is these vehicles people are distracted and can cause accidents. A lot of the accidents you see at signalized intersections are also rear ends, where people aren't gauging how quickly they're approaching an intersection when they've seen that it's red and it turns to green. So just another reminder to everyone to keep your eyes on the road and really pay attention to our surroundings when we're behind the wheel.
Next question.
Okay. Next is a comment. The park size should be maximized. The residents do not want money for the city. We would want the maximum open space. Next is a question. When will Parcel B be reviewed?
Yeah, I can talk about that. We had done a neighborhood meeting that focused a little bit more on Parcel B in 2020. That presentation is available on the uplandscolorado.com/resources website. We have done a pre-application meeting with the city on that parcel, and we'll be looking to do a site-specific official development plan in the future. That process with the city will include another city-hosted neighborhood meeting just like this.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question.
Please define, quote, mixed use and, quote, comprehensive mixed use plan exactly.
I can talk a little bit about that. We touched on it at the beginning. We were talking about the comprehensive plan. So again, that comprehensive plan helps guide the city's vision for development as it occurs within the city. This specific parcel has the traditional neighborhood development district on it. So what that means is this parcel A allows for and requires a mix of uses. So we are required to have residential uses that can be single family up to multifamily. And then it requires a portion to have commercial uses, which could be an office, it could be, small neighborhood shops, restaurants, things of that nature to help create kind of an inclusive and varied neighborhood within the parcel.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Quote, reduce system-wide water use from 126 gallons per capita per day to 110 GPCD or lower by 2030, a 12.5% reduction over 10 years, end quote. Last night, the representative from the Water Division said the addition of 7,000 people from this development would not impact the city water supply. I think this contradicts what was adopted with the 2020 water plan. The city is facing drought conditions again, and the 2020 water plan report to City Council by City Manager Tripp stated that there already is a gap in current usage versus water supply. Where is the water going to come from to support a development of 7,000 people? This is an increase of 6% to the total city population. So is the 2020 water plan 12.5% reduction in water usage being done to support the increase in development? Because the math does not add up unless residents are being told to use less so that private developers can come in and build out this city and residents are paying for it. End of question. I'm happy to repeat any of this too if necessary.
That was a lengthy question, and I'll let Bonnie or Marcus speak to some of the big picture, and then I'll go to Julie if she wants to add some of discuss maybe the policy related to this question.
Yeah, Todd, would you like to join in again and talk just a little bit more about the water and our usage from a high level perspective?
Yeah, let me try to frame the question a little bit. We are using the current standards. We're using the current planning that the city has provided to us. So we are aligned with the efficiencies that we should see within these units. Again, we're aligned with this budget that we've talked about for the overall project. So as far as the reductions, I think that's maybe a question that the city can answer a little better than us as far as that part of it. But again, this impact to the water system that is questioned here has been analyzed by us, also has been analyzed by the city and their consultant. And from an infrastructure standpoint, this project will be upgrading systems around this project to make sure that the water supply for not only what we're developing, but any deficiencies that are caused will be taken care of as well. So from that supply side, we can tell you that that's being taken care of. But I think I would pass it back to the city on this one, at least as far as the water plan. They probably have more of an in-depth understanding of that in the reduction that's asked for here. So thanks.
Thank you, Julie.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. So there are a lot of numbers and there are a lot of references to what I think is the water supply plan that was presented to City Council earlier in January. I'm going to take the option to confer with my colleagues in water quality and resources so that we respond accurately to some of the numbers. I really want to truth this 7,000, and I want to confirm that the 2020 water plan is really the water supply plan so that we can provide a more accurate response to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So I just want to clarify that that reply will be a written reply, and it will be in the posting on that will be done next week as a follow-up to this meeting. So just to clarify where that answer will come from and where it will arrive. Looks like there's a number of other questions to follow. So next question.
Thank you. Next question is, why would 4 to 5 story multifamily buildings and 3-story single-family attached 3-story multifamily area, especially when considering that Midtown development, most dense urban/suburban development north of Denver, or the fact that in Denver, the outlying neighborhoods are 3-story multifamily and 2-story single family. In Denver, you need to go downtown to find taller buildings. End of question.
All right, I can take that one. So as you saw in our presentation, the 4 and 5 story buildings were focused on the village center. the design guidelines that are for the traditional mixed-use neighborhood development within the city encourage a denser collection of these multifamily units around that village center. So those 4- and 5-story buildings are consistent with the goals of the traditional mixed-use neighborhood development. The comprehensive plan also focuses areas of growth and density in areas like this site where there are existing infrastructure to help support this. And then finally, the 3-story buildings, I think, were mentioned in that comment as well. And those provide opportunities for more attainably priced homes. They typically sit on a little bit smaller lots, have lower water usage, lower maintenance options. So try to help provide additional housing opportunities for Westminster residents, something that's between the larger lot, single family detached, and the apartment units that exist in the city today.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question.
So the next question is, the dates on the slide are 6+ years old. Answer that. It is unclear which slide is being referred to here. It was about 6:16 p.m. when the question was asked.
Yeah, John, I think that was referring to one of our first slides that shows the two, the 11 and the 10-acre public land dedication, but I'm not sure what the 6 years old is referring to. So those locations are what we've been working with staff and presenting in our neighborhood meetings for the last year or so.
Okay, I'll suggest that the person who asked the question, please clarify that if your question was not answered with Bonnie's reply, just restate the question further down in the chat and we'll get to that hopefully. Next question is, what is the project number in the city's e-Trackit system to look up each of the MODPs for each of the parcels?
We can list those all out, but I think it's probably more effective to include those in our summary notes. There's a lot of letters and numbers. Maybe someone could put those in the chat box too. I don't know if people can see that, but we'll make sure those numbers are on the summary notes.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question.
Next is, what makes you think curved streets slow people down? What world do you live in?
So that is based, Todd, if you want to talk a little bit more about the traffic specifics, but we defer to traffic engineers and their analysis on things like that. But the basic idea being that as you turn corners, you typically slow down a little to make those turns instead of just a straight shot through.
Thanks, Bonnie. That's the same world I live in. So I think, you know, just in general, what we try to do from a traffic calming perspective, there's many tools in the toolbox for us. Some of those things are curb extensions, also provides that safer intersection, one of the comments that we had before. Another element is actually putting curvilinear elements into the street or with the street. And that actually slows people down or calms people from driving faster. And so there's a lot of things that actually come into play. This is a general reference to that. And again, traffic calming will be one of the things that we're looking at as we get into our detailed design. Again, back to the question of, you know, about the accidents, we're trying to slow traffic down, calm it, make it a safe pedestrian area and also biking area when that is within the street corridors as well. So thanks for that question.
Thanks, Todd. Next question.
Given the large number of businesses shutting down, more office space being vacated as more work remotely permanently, many city commercial areas are blight. Why would the city approve more commercial, retail, office space when the current business areas are already stressed and empty?
So we can talk a little bit about why we are proposing to include some, again, trying to create an inclusive mixed use neighborhood within this location consistent with the city's planning documents. But a key piece of that is the success of retail and new retail coming in is typically tied to more households. So, you know, we've been doing a lot of research and looking at what's in our neighborhood and talking to commercial developers, and, you know, they see interest in this location, but need additional homes in order to support that. So we're trying to create this vibrant community that provides some restaurant and retail options for both the existing and future residents, and trying to look in the long term for what commercial needs may occur in the future.
The only thing I'd add to that, and I think it's important, is that we're also trying to create really a whole neighborhood. And I think that part of that is really to get to a lot of the questions we've heard tonight. We want to help change some of those traffic patterns. We all drive in the neighborhood to a different area for a grocer and some of those retails. So by bringing them in and having a whole, that true mixed use neighborhood to have those, we actually think that will limit and change those traffic patterns. So again, I think that's part of the vision. We certainly are trying to honor what the city has said with those visioning documents as well.
Patrick, you were on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. I'm not anymore. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Marcus. Next question.
Setback needs to be increased to 35 feet or more along Lowell. So will you make that happen?
We can provide a little bit more detail on this in the written response. We're showing in the plans in this presentation the detailed cross section for Lowell. So the setbacks that we're showing are measured to the right-of-way. That's the ultimate right-of-way. So for example, on Lowell, we're making sidewalk improvements, things like that. We'll be widening the right-of-way on the Uplands side of the parcel, so that 18-foot setback is measured from that right-of-way line, not the existing flow line.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because frequently setbacks are confusing, and typically the city right-of-way is the back of the sidewalk. So if it's 18 feet, it would be, or 20 feet, or 40 feet, it would be measured from the back of the sidewalk. So from the curb, there's a tree lawn and then a sidewalk. So that pushes I guess the feel of the setback farther away. So if we're talking about, 30 feet, we would, from the edge of the right of way, if you add the sidewalk, which is standard 5 feet, and the tree lawn is about 6 feet, you're adding another 11 feet from the drive lane or the parking lane. Anyway, it's just sometimes confusing. Thank you. Thanks, Bonnie, for your answer. Next question, please.
Okay, I'll provide an answer to this. Is there a translation option for non-English speakers? Yes, the city can provide this service if we understand there's a need in advance. Understanding that we did not receive that in advance of this meeting, we'll do our best to translate the remaining questions that are posted on our webpage in relation to this meeting. Next question is, do the setbacks along major roads include the turn lanes, or are the setbacks from the road and turn lanes?
So again, any street improvements, whether it's travel lanes or turn lanes, the tree lawns, generally the sidewalks are all part of the right-of-way. In most locations, that right-of-way ends at the back of sidewalk. So the setbacks would be measured from that right-of-way line, which is again from the back of the proposed sidewalk.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Next question is, do you have a 3D presentation of those huge 4-story apartments blocking out the view of the Front Range except to the apartment dwellers?
We do not have 3D renderings of that yet. The details of that will be determined with the site-specific development plan. Right now, it would just be, you know, best guesses, but we don't know exactly where those multifamily uses and how tall they will be until we do that site-specific development plan in the future. But happy to show renderings at that time.
Next question, please.
What is the estimated purchase cost from Oriad for the single-family detached homes? What is the estimated purchase cost for single-family attached homes?
So Uplands is the master developer. Each of these homes will be developed by home builders that we will partner with. The Uplands team itself does not do the vertical development. So we don't have specific pricing unless, Chad, you want to talk a little bit about that. But we don't anticipate that occurring for the next year or two.
Yeah, and thanks, Bonnie. Just to add, you know, pricing is market-based. We're working on an attainable by design layout for these neighborhoods, and so we will have a wide variety of pricing. None of that's determined today.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Chad, and thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
I believe this might be a question about parks, although it's not clear. The question is, how will you guarantee that we will be able to use them if they are a HOA?
Yeah, so if it is an HOA or some other entity that will own and maintain those parks, they have the ability to designate them as public through public access easements on the plat or other legal documents like that.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
What % of Parcel A dwelling units are planned as rental property versus buyer owned?
And we don't have a breakdown for that quite yet. That'll continue to evolve as we work through the site-specific development plans, but we do anticipate we'll have some of both.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
I would like to know where 86th Avenue is located and how this is going to affect those who live on 85th Avenue. As you are aware, 85th Avenue is extremely narrow street. Do you plan on widening 85th?
I can try to provide a little bit more detail on that. So 86 is generally in the middle of Parcel A. It does not, on the west side, it does not align with any existing streets on the west side of Lowell in order to prevent cut-through traffic. Both 86 and the proposed 85th Street to the south, neither of those align directly with existing streets, again, just to prevent that cut-through traffic. Todd, I don't think we have any improvements made on or planned for 85th west of us, but wanted to see if you could confirm that.
That's correct, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Next question is part question, part statement. This has nothing for our current residents. Why are they hogging even a park? Why isn't there something for everyone? This is not inclusive.
So the two larger public land dedications are in the northwest corner and then approximately at 86th and Federal. And we wanted to be thoughtful with where those parks were located. The northwest portion of the property has great access to the school sites to the west and the existing neighborhoods. We wanted to make sure that park was very visible and accessible to the existing residents today. And then the park at 86th and Federal, where that village center and retail and restaurant spaces will exist, want to have the opportunity for, the residents of Uplands and the overall area to be able to utilize those retail spaces and the park that's next to it for community events or, different things like that.
The only thing I'd add to that, I just want to restate it. I think maybe they misunderstood the way the question came up, that when we were talking about the upland parks. I just want to say that again, every park will be open to all of the public. So these are completely public parks. And I think it's just the way we go through that. So we're trying to be very mindful of that and plan that with you as neighbors. So every park is open to all residents.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Currently, no other buildings on Federal or in the area, so that does not fit with existing buildings or neighborhood. So how is 65-foot fit in? I read that verbatim, but I think it sounds like they're asking or questioning the height of 65 feet along Federal.
Yeah, and we're not trying to replicate the neighborhood exactly. We're trying to be consistent with the goals and intent of the traditional mixed-use neighborhood, which encourages that higher density and mixed-use buildings along Federal, and then really transition down as we head west across the parcel.
Sorry. Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Okay, this question is directed to the city and city parks. Last night, it was confirmed that the city agreed to a cash in lieu of PLD instead of 12 acres per 1,000 persons, only requiring 5 acres per 1,000 for public park, and took cash. Where will that cash be used? Will it be invested in public park for this severely underserved Shaw Heights and older Westminster? Per TPL, Shaw Heights has only 2% parks. The affluent areas of the city have more than 15% parks and golf courses. End of question.
I think that one was directed specifically to the city.
There's Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Nicole Ankeny, and I'm a senior landscape architect with the city in the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department. At this point in time, city staff has been working with the developer on the location of the parks that you saw in their presentation for Parcel A, as well as the other 4 parcels. At this point in time, that is a recommendation. City Council has the ultimate authority on the public land dedication and the distribution as to physical land dedication versus cash in lieu. City code does allow 3 options, basically: 100% physical land dedication, 100% cash in lieu, or a combination. Depending on the particular development, the city staff and the developers look at all of the available park and open space in the vicinity, areas that may have, need some additional park space, connections, wildlife habitats, trail corridors and whatnot, and try to make the best recommendation. But again, the city council has the ultimate authority on finalizing that. At this point in time, we shouldn't state that the city has agreed to it. Nothing has been approved officially at this point in time, and that can only be done by our city council. When it comes to how the funds will be used, that really comes down to timing. Assuming the cash in lieu is approved by city council, that comes down to timing, because the cash in lieu funds, as well as the physical land itself, that occurs at final plat. So as each of these specific official development plans come in, when the final plats are developed, that is when the transactions take place. So, of course, we would be looking, the city would evaluate what the needs are at the time that that happens. This is a long-range development plan. So at this point in time, I can't get into the specifics of what those might be, because that will depend upon when the dollars become available and what the park needs are in the area.
Thank you, Nicole. Next question, please.
City employees stated last night that even with this development, there is enough water for for indoor use. This implies the city staff is making a decision to allow this development at the detriment to existing residents' landscapes, which often cost individual owners several $1,000s. Can you help me understand why this is an acceptable risk or trade-off to put upon existing residents?
I think that's a couple of questions in there. And I'm going to ask Julie Keeler again to just address the city's water model.
Julie, I think you're on mute.
Julie, you're on mute. Okay, it looks like we're having a connection issue there. So there's a piece here in this question about water use and indoor water use, and I think Todd has noted some of that earlier in the presentation. If he wanted to revisit that or give it a little more detail for this particular question. So thank you, Julie. Okay, looks like we're a little slow in getting an answer to this question. So before we move to the next one, I'll just make an assumption that we will put this in writing, and this will be posted next week with the rest of all the questions and answers from tonight's meeting. Apologies for the missing connections here at this point in the meeting. So next question, please.
Okay, this appears to be more of a comment, but some of the staff or applicant may want to respond to this. Again, their residents, not ours, children are being neglected of their own space. What has this to offer any future for them?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the 2 public land dedication locations in Parcel A, but within Uplands in general, we are showing over 40 acres of public land dedication, including view corridors in some of the parcels south of 84th. Again, all those parks will be open to the public. Those 40 acres are owned and maintained by the city. All the Uplands parks will be public, and just focusing a little bit on the northwest corner of A, and that public land dedication is directly adjacent to elementary and public schools, specifically to help serve some of the local children that live there today.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Next is a comment. Feedback is, we don't want your uplands in this neighborhood. How's that for feedback? Next, I believe, yeah, this is a question and a comment. What about community gardens and no houses? Where is the humanity? Are there community gardens potentially proposed in this, I think is the question here.
Yeah, we've absolutely have a commitment to community agriculture and hope to encourage community gardens throughout Uplands. On our website, in the resources tab, we have our schematic design package, which talks a little bit about that. And much of the public open space are going to be part of that public land dedication that will be developed by the city with community input. On our input page, we have opportunities to talk about what kind of amenities you'd like to see. We're happy to pass it along to the city as well, and encourage all the residents to participate in that public process with the city when those parks are being designed.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Next question is, who will be paying for all of the water for all those trees you have planned?
I'll just answer that one right away. I think I'll just say that the HOA or the district will service the common area, so that area, and then the city, as Bonnie has mentioned a number of times, the 40 acres of PLD, the city will pay for or will service the water on those trees.
Thank you, Marcus. Next slide, please.
Next question is, all the slides have a disclaimer that anything can change. How much of this quote concept end quote can change?
That's a good question. The reason that note is on the slide today is, I guess there's two reasons. One, we're currently in the review process with the city. We're hearing feedback today. We need to make a resubmittal to the city. So some of the images that we're showing today could change as part of this review process. The second piece is some of the images that we're showing today are more graphic than what shows up in the master ODP or the master official development plan. But the document that gets approved by city council within the master official development plan is a recorded document that we need to either abide to or amend with future development applications.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
Okay, I'll combine the next two. They're from the same citizen. Will all the future meetings be open to everyone, and will everyone be notified?
Yeah, we absolutely, and I'll just answer that from our perspective. All of our meetings are open to everyone. The city has required meetings like this one they're hosting tonight, and they do such a great job of providing that notice and allowing everybody in the notice area. Again, I'll just say, and I saw a question later on clarifying that somebody didn't receive notice. We notify by the assessor's office all the addresses for all the property owners. So we did 4.5 times the notice area for this meeting. We notified over 1,300 people because we want to hear and want you all to read that. So I'm sorry if somebody didn't receive that, but yes, these meetings are all open and we look forward to continuing to have that dialogue.
Thank you, Marcus. Next question, please.
Okay. How much, if any, of this will be dedicated as affordable housing units?
We don't have, oh, go ahead, Marcus.
Well, I was just going to say we don't have a specific percentage of affordable housing that's been designated yet, but I will say, and it's something that I answered earlier when we talked about whole communities, that is such an important part of the vision of this site. We believe there has to be diversity, as I talked about the housing type. So that's single family attached, single family detached, market rate multifamily, and also affordable housing. So the city doesn't have specific guidance on that, the type of percentage, but we are working with them, working through that process, and we are actively working with affordable housing developers.
Thank you, Marcus. Next question, please.
The next question, I'll answer this. Can I have the presentation emailed to me? Yes, we can either email you the presentation, but we will have this presentation linked and posted on our webpage, and it might be easier to provide you with the link to that. And so we'll provide a little bit more information on this at the end of the presentation. The next question is, last night an attendee pointed out that the city development plans require 12 acres per 1,000 residents to be PLD, but Uplands only has 5 acres per 1,000 residents. The city shared that Uplands can choose to design with less and pay the city per missing PLD instead. What will the city be paid per acre for the acreage that is missing PLD?
Patrick, I can
yeah.
take this one.
Okay, thank you.
So the way that PLD is calculated is very specific in the city code. For any of you that wishes to dive into the details, it's in the Westminster Municipal Code, and it's under 11-6-8, Section B. So the code requires that we do a population projection, and that is based upon housing unit types. So for example, single-family detached counts as 3 persons per unit. Single-family attached units is 2.5, and we go kind of right down the row as far as that projected population. So what we do is determine the number of acres owed to the city. Then we subtract out any physical land, and then the remaining acres that are to be paid in cash in lieu are paid to the city at fair market value. At this point in time, until we have the specifics, I don't have an exact amount, because we need to determine what that projected population is to determine the official number of acres, first of all. But second of all, that will be fair market value when those site-specific official development plans come into the city, since all of that takes place at final plat.
Thanks, Nicole. That was a helpful explanation. Next question, please.
Will the information be published on the city's media?
Patrick, do you want to take that one since it's specific to the city's website?
Sure. I think the question is asking whether the questions and answers this evening will be posted on the city's website. And yes, and the links are will be posted on the at the last slide here. So yes, it will be available. And I did note that the target for getting answers from unanswered questions from last night is Monday, and Tuesday we hope to finish up any unanswered questions from tonight's meeting. So I hope I answered that question. Thanks. So next question.
Okay, the next question, I think I already answered it earlier, but what is the city doing to ensure that non-English speakers will be able to engage in the process? Even the Uplands website only partially translates into selected languages, but not entirely. This is a similar question to what we had earlier. If the city is aware that there is a need for translation, we can provide that if we know in advance. We'll do our best to translate some of the proceedings here tonight if we possibly can. The next question is a restatement from an earlier question where the term background was used. This question is restated and saying, sorry, I meant what are the backyard options instead of background. So that makes a little more sense now.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So the different home types could have different background or backyard treatments. So single family detached homes, may have ground floor, open areas. The traditional mixed use guidelines talk about that in a little bit of detail, providing specific square footage for each lot. But some of the other uses might have, for example, balconies or private courtyards, things like that. So there's a variety of options for the variety of people that will likely live in Uplands, and all those details will be shown on the site-specific official development plans.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next question, please.
If we live in close proximity to one of the parcels, how will our property values be affected by this new development?
Yeah, I'll just say I think there's a lot of factors that go into determining, property values or influencing property values. But I'll say, and perhaps you will view this as more of an editorial, but being within immediate or near proximity to vibrant and walkable and thriving neighborhood with open spaces and parks is very desirable. So I certainly believe, we all would believe that this will have very positive impacts.
Thank you, Marcus. I'm looking at the time at 7:30 on the nose, and so I think we're going to take one more question, and then we will close the meeting, and we will proceed to answer the unanswered questions and get them all out to the public by next Tuesday. So next question, please.
Next question is, how does the city label the density of parcel A, e.g. moderate density, high density, etc.? For this label, what is the dwelling units per acre by definition? E.g. max 8 dwelling units per acre is moderate, or max 16 DUs per acre is high density.
Patrick, do you want to take that? Looks like it's directed to the city. Otherwise, we're happy to talk about it too.
I'm going to let you speak to that because I think earlier on you actually noted some of the densities for the parcel. You have them more at the tip of your fingers than I do right now on this project this evening. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think just tying it to some of the densities that are discussed in the comprehensive plan overall, our traditional mixed use neighborhood development allows up to 18 homes per acre. We go 8 to, I believe it was 15, depending on the two different parcels, whether it's the village residential or the village center. For comparison, the comprehensive plan identifies some high density residential areas, not on this site, but just as a reference. Those go up to 36 homes per acre. So Patrick, just trying to explain high density parcels in the city, not this parcel specifically, could go up to 36. This is capped at 18 per the comprehensive plan. And then our preliminary development plans and master official development plans cap it to that just over 10 homes per acre, the 1,531 homes on this parcel.
Thank you, Bonnie. And with that, I'm going to wrap up the questions, and I'll repeat again that the unanswered questions will be addressed, and you can find them on Tuesday next week, February 2nd, on the city's webpage. And I wanted to say thank you to other city staff for being here and available to answer questions, and to all the neighbors and residents that are here, and to the applicant. I think we got some good information and some good feedback. And Bonnie or Marcus, if you had any closing words.
No, we're terrific. Thank you very much. This was great feedback, and we look forward to answering the rest of the questions.
Okay. Thank you again. And I'm going to move to the next slide, which should indicate the link to where the information can be found. I think it's the city's YouTube link. So there it is. And you can also see the project, follow the project on the development status webpage, and there's a link to that also. And if you have any particular questions, I'm around and available to reply. And I think my email is on here someplace. There we go. So yeah, and next, there's the final slide. So there's my email, the very last one. So we repeated on this very last slide the webpage link. And just to remind you that there's a couple more revisions needed before any public hearings will be scheduled, and you will be notified of those future public hearings. And again, thank you very much for attending this evening, and hope you continue to be involved. Good night, everyone. Thanks.